6:15. This is the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. Here's the news edited by Dulvin Samarasinghe and read by Rumesh Piris. And first the headlines. A special court meeting decides to take an oath at the commencement of the statements. The National People's Power says no solution to the crisis was discussed in the Parliament. The US government announces third tranche of new funding. Sri Lanka and Australia Open Fisheries Monitoring Centre. The 8th International Day of Yoga marked in Colombo. The Appeals Court orders magistrates to make fresh orders against MP Johnston Fernando. In news overseas, battle for Severodonetsk intensifies. And in sports, Lisa Starker becomes the first woman to be appointed president of the Federation of International Cricketers Association. And now the local news in detail. A special court meeting held today decided to take an oath at the commencement of the statements made by the officials when summoned before the committee. Accordingly, officials who will be appearing before court in future will have to take an oath at the beginning of the committee meeting that their statements are accurate and truthful. The special meeting of the Committee on Public Enterprises was chaired by MP Professor Charita Herath. The chairman tabled the statement's withdrawal letter dated 11/6/2022 pertaining to the statement made on the 10/6/2022 at the court by the former CEB chairman MMC Ferdinando. It was decided to summon Mr. Ferdinando before court on the 23rd/6/2022 at 11 a.m. It was decided to hold a special meeting on July 25th based on the expert reports on the progress of Sri Lankan Airlines. The National People's Power MP Anurakumara Dissanayake said today that the new government has failed in a short period of time. He told Parliament that the new government has failed to present any solution to the burning issues faced by the people and said a short-term action plan should be presented before the country. He said people are dying in petrol and gas queues while cost of living has gone beyond the reach of the common man. MP Dissanayake said no solution to the crisis was discussed in Parliament and pointed out that they only conduct a mere talk show. Australia's Minister for Home Affairs has jointly opened a fisheries monitoring centre with the Minister of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Development Douglas Devananda in Colombo today. Australia is committed to supporting Sri Lanka's efforts to strengthen its border management capacity. This support has been funding provided to install vessel monitoring systems into over 4,000 multi-day fishing vessels. The VMS will enhance maritime domain awareness, build capacity to combat people smuggling, illegal, unregulated and unreported fishing in the region and play a key role in counter-terrorism efforts. The Fisheries Monitoring Centre will enable Sri Lankan authorities to monitor the location of the vessels. This will provide an important lifeline for vessels requiring assistance. This will also assist the Fisheries Ministry to monitor and ensure fishing stocks are not exploited and overfished. The Court of Appeal today held that Colombo Fort Magistrate should make fresh orders in terms of law when MP Johnston Fernando appears before court in due course in connection with the attacks took place at Golface. The Court of Appeal observed Johnston Fernando had surrendered not on his own accord, but as a result of the interim order of the Court of Appeal. A mega event was organized by the High Commission of India and the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Centre at the Independence Square today in Colombo to mark the 8th International Day of Yoga. The theme for the 8th International Day of Yoga is Yoga for Humanity. During his day address in India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi mentioned that yoga is not only for an individual but for the entire humanity. He said yoga brings peace to society, world and the universe. President Gotabaya Rajapaksa addressed a message to the Prime Minister of India defining yoga as an invaluable ancient Indian tradition to attain physical, social and mental well-being. The event was held in the presence of Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe. Acting Indian High Commissioner Vinod K. Jacob, officials and staff of the High Commission, hundreds of yoga enthusiasts from all over Sri Lanka took part in the event. This news broadcast comes to you from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation. And we continue with more local news. The Industrial Disputes Special Provisions Draft Bill was passed in Parliament today. Presenting the draft bill, he said about 16,000 labour cases are being heard at magistrates' court. He said this act will empower the labour tribunals to solve them. It will also expedite compensation payments. MP Sarath Veerasekara said transactions with the IMF should be done very carefully. He said he will vote against the 21st Amendment. MP Vasudeva Nanakara pointed out 21st Amendment will make Parliament a centre of power. MP Premanath C. Dunawata said the opposition has presented what cannot be done through the 21st Amendment. He pointed out the importance of effecting amendments without holding a referendum. The Business Committee of Parliament decided to convene parliamentary sessions only today and tomorrow due to the fuel crisis. The committee convened this afternoon, chaired by Speaker Mahinda Yapa Abeyewardene. The Ministry of Health says 4 million Pfizer vaccines brought to the country are remaining. The ministry said some are not keen to get a third dose when the opportunity has been given even to get a fourth dose. Therefore, the Ministry of Health said public should pay their attention to utilize the facilities given for their health protection. The Supreme Court has rejected granting leave to proceed with the 5 fundamental rights petitions challenging the appointment of businessman Dhammika Pereira as a Member of Parliament. The petitions were taken up by a 3-judge bench comprising Justices Priyantha Jayawardena, Yasantha Kodaguda and Arjuna Besekara. Delivering the verdict, Justice Priyantha Jayawardena, who headed the 3-judge bench, said the bench would not grant leave to proceed with the petitions according to the decision of the majority of the bench. In parallel with the 101st World Hydrography Day that falls on the 21st June, Sri Lanka Navy marked the annual celebrations at the auditorium of National Aquatic Resources Research and Development Agency today. The event, which was presided over by the Chief of Staff of the Navy and Joint Chief Hydrographer at the Government of Sri Lanka and Chief Hydrographer of the Navy, Rear Admiral Y.N. Jayant Ratna, by a UN resolution that was passed in 2005, the 21st June each year is dedicated to celebrate the World Hydrography Day. And that ends local news.
The main news story is brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
Moving on to the main news story, the government of the United States has announced that the third tranche of the new funding today to address the immediate needs of people hardest hit by the economic crisis in Sri Lanka. The U.S. Embassy in Colombo said this humanitarian assistance totaling $5.75 million will provide cash assistance, short-term jobs and agriculture supplies such as seeds directly to crisis-affected people to meet their basic needs. This new grant funding through the U.S. Agency for International Development builds on last week's announcement of $6 million in grants through USAID and $120 million in new loans through the Development Finance Corporation to meet the needs of Sri Lankans during the economic crisis. And that came to you in the main news story.
The main news story was brought to you by Siddhalepa Vedamahatmya.
In Watchlight, the Health Ministry says arrangements are being made to issue fuel to vehicles of health sector employees every Friday at 74 filling stations island-wide. All healthcare staff members who are seeking this facility should be in possession of proof of identity, such as the department identity card, which should be produced at the filling station if necessary. And that came to you in Watchlight. A bulletin of world news is next. And first, the headlines of the world news. Battle for Severodonetsk intensifies. Chinese ships enter Japan's territorial waters. Former senior member says UN sexual abuse claims must be investigated. Now the world news in detail. Russia is concentrating its forces and firepower on the last Ukrainian stronghold in the eastern region of Luhansk. While the battle for Severodonetsk hits maximum intensity, Ukrainian forces are pushing to recapture the southern region of Kherson. Russia's defense ministry confirmed yesterday its troops were attacking Ukrainian positions in both Donetsk and neighboring Luhansk. Japan Coast Guard officials say 2 Chinese government ships have entered Japan's territorial waters near the Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea. Officials said the ships entered waters of Utsuri Island this morning. They added that the ships apparently tried to approach a Japanese fishing boat operating in the area. Officials say Chinese vessels were sailing in Japanese waters southwest of Usuri Island. An ex-senior UN member has said claims of sexual abuse and corruption at the United Nations should urgently be investigated by an independent panel. Purna Sen's comments follow a BBC investigation which revealed the sackings of a UN member of staff who tried to expose alleged wrongdoing. Ms. Sen said the UN should step up and adopt any suggestions made by a panel. The UN has said it is committed to protecting bona fide whistleblowers and holding staff accountable. Back to the headlines of the world news. Battle for Severodonetsk intensifies. Chinese ships enter Japan's territorial waters. And former senior member says UN sexual abuse claims must be investigated. And that concludes world news. Moving on to development news. Sri Lanka Tourism Development Authority entered an MOU with the Australian government-funded Skills for Inclusive Growth program managed by Palladium International Group towards several strategic areas of cooperation. The parties agreed on the cooperation framework to support key strategic initiatives, including revitalizing national tour guides, operations to test destination development initiatives that engage visitors within rural and remote communities, initiatives to improve the performance of tourism businesses. And that was development news.
Sports news is brought to you by
Sampath Bank. We present your future.
Moving on to sports news, it's cricket. The fourth one-day international between Sri Lanka and Australia is underway at R. Premadasa Stadium in Colombo. Australia chose to field and Sri Lanka were 258 all out short while ago. In other news, Lisa Starker has become the first woman to be appointed president of the Federation of International Cricketers Association. The former Australia captain was confirmed at the FICA Executive Committee meeting held in Lyon, Switzerland. In rugby news, transgender players have been banned from women's internationals while Rugby League's governing body does further research on its inclusive policy. International Rugby League said it wanted to balance the individual's right to participate against perceived risk to other participants. The move comes as a member of sports are considering transgender inclusion. In swimming news, Italy's Thomas Secon smashed the world record to win gold in the men's 100-meter backstroke at the World Championships in Budapest yesterday. The 21-year-old took victory in 51.60 seconds, 0.25 seconds better than Ryan Murphy's previous mark set in 2016. America's four-time Olympic gold medalist Murphy claimed silver, while compatriot Hunter Armstrong was third. And that was sports news.
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
Business news sponsored by National Savings Bank, the safest place for your money.
In business news, SLT Mobitel has signed a landmark agreement with the National Water Supply and Drainage Board to provide a call centre solution for the benefit of all citizens. Under the agreement, SLT Mobitel will provide a comprehensive call centre solution with 1939 as the toll-free short code for citizens seeking NWSDB services. The technological solution enables automated customer self-service and agent-assisted voice call facilities. And that was business news.
Business news sponsored by
Cash through NSP globally and win wonderful gifts locally. Will you be the lucky winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee? 50 gold sovereigns for the top prize winner of the NSP Golden Jubilee. Scooters for the 10 second prize winners. iPhones for the 10 third prize winners. Mountain bikes for the 29 fourth prize winners. From October 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2022. Remit a minimum of $100 or an equivalent amount in any foreign currency 3 times through NSB U Trust.
In economic news, the Sri Lanka Trade Development Council expressed serious concern over the near collapsing of business activities of 1 million small and medium-scale business enterprises in the country owing to the present economic crisis. The SLTDC said the deterioration of small and medium-scale business enterprises in the country will badly affect a large number of workers who are involved in the businesses enterprises. And that was economic news. And finally, moving on to the weather news. Met Department says several spells showers will occur in the western, Sabragamua and northwestern provinces and in the Kandy, Nuwara Eliya, Galle and Matara districts. Showers or thundershowers will occur at few places in the Uva province and in Ampara and Batiklo districts during the afternoon or night. And that was the weather report. And to end this news broadcast, a recap of the main news headlines. A special COOP meeting decides to take an oath at the commencement of the statements. The National People's Power says no solution to the crisis was discussed in Parliament. The US government announces third tranche of new funding. Sri Lanka and Australia open Fisheries Monitoring Centre. The 8th International Day of Yoga marked in Colombo. The Appeals Court orders magistrate to make fresh orders against MP Johnson Fernando. In news overseas, battle for Severodonetsk intensifies. And in sports, Lisa Stolaka becomes the first woman to be appointed President of the Federation of International Cricketers Association. And that concludes this news broadcast from the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation.